Hello. Is the mic okay? Okay. So today we won't be talking about any of those things that they mentioned in the intro. Also, thank you guys for being here. It's not an easy job to be here after the lunch, and the organizer is making it especially hard for me by turning the lights off. I give it quite a serious thought what I could talk about today. Just a second. Yeah, cool. I give it quite a serious thought what I can talk about today with you guys that is not really available via Google search. So one of the things that popped in my mind is that something that you cannot find on Google is like the past 5 years and what have brought behind the scenes. So I won't focus on the first, what's next for Web3, but the really important part is the second line below, which is less than the insights gained from the Web3 in the past 5 years. Sorry about that. I'm just moving the cursor. Guys, can we make it full screen? From there? Okay. It's in the browser, so it's probably okay. Fine. No, it's good. It's good. Cool. So, quick intro. Oh, thanks. Quick intro about who am I and what I'm doing and why you should listen to me at all. So in the brief, as previously mentioned, I'm one of the co-founders and the CEO of LimeChain. We are building the Web3 and been building the Web3 in the past 5 years. We just founded the 4 founders. Now we're 100 people strong. We have more than 150 projects behind our belt, and we have more than 200 smart contracts on mainnet. I think this is kind of old, so that's maybe should be updated. And some of them, the notable names we've been working on, that's the Graph, Polkadot, Hedera, and one especially important one, which is relevant for today's presentation, is INView. INView is founded by Eric Rice, who is behind the Lean Startup movement and is behind, the whole approach of building startups in the more efficient ways. And this is relevant because we'll be tap on that later on. Also, LimeChain is part of the bigger group of companies. As I mentioned, along our way, we found that there are so many things we can do via tech, but also there are so many emerging problems related to training people and education in blockchain, and also the legal aspect. So thus we have 2 more companies in our ecosystem, which is Lime Academy, part of the team which is here today, and they are focused on training the next cohort of blockchain developers. I think we're doing quite an incredible job in general in tech, and what we do is we kind of transfer the Web2 developers into Web3. Second one is called Lime Legal, and the focus of Lime Legal is to support the founders and companies into navigating the legal aspect of building a crypto business. From time to time you heard news about things that are going on due to not properly done due diligence or not evaluating the risks, the latest one being Tornado Cash. And quickly about me, just 3 lines. I've been part of the startup ecosystem since 2012. I've been very luckily, or maybe this was kind of a curse, that my first job was in startup that has been VC backed. So I got a really good perspective of what's it's like to be a founder, and then how the founders operate, how the VCs operate, and the whole ecosystem. And we see this thing copying all over again in Web3 space. Yeah, I've been active part of the ecosystem as an employee, as a founder, as part of a supporting group of VC fund, and I spend most of my career building startups and companies. So what are we going to talk about today? I try to outline and distill what I have learned in the past 5 years, and outline 5 insights I gained along my journey. And I really hope this will be helpful for you. Just a quick question before we start. How many of you guys are working actively, are founders, about to found, or thinking about starting something on their own in Web3? You can just raise your hand. Cool. So, first insight, it's like the startup knowledge is gone. And what I mean by that is the following. In the very early days, in 2000s, before the tech bubble, VCs were throwing money at the founders. It was really easy to raise cash at that point. We have heard the notorious story about raising several millions on a napkin idea. That happened, actually, and used to happen in the past. But after the dot-com bubble, VCs started to realize that that is not efficient. They have to have a better way to invest their money, because behind the VCs, there are limited partners that have invested their money and they're looking for returns. And this is when the lean startup movement started. The lean startup, and what it actually says is that I will take this small amount of money, I make it as productive as possible, I'll talk with my clients, I validate my idea, I'll make sure that what I'm building and spending time on is viable, it's wanted by the users, and I'll give it my all. That's in a nutshell. What it meant for the VCs is that allowed them flexibility and also allowed them to invest smaller amount of cash very early on, and after that increase the series fund until we got to the point where we raised millions. And along this way, we have distilled a lot of knowledge in how to build that in an efficient way. This knowledge has been, have been gained since 2000s until 2015, 16, when was the most active part of building startups. And what I've learned along the way is that we don't use that in Web3. We're just building. We're focused on building stuff. We don't talk with the users. We don't validate our ideas. I had this very stupid thing that I did like 4 years ago when we just started the company, and I'm talking with a client of ours, potential partners, and I'm talking with them, like, all right, but have you validated this with your users? Have you talked about, what your guys doing? Is this something that they want? And was like, the answer was, you're not really understanding what blockchain thing is, right? You're not really into that. So I think one of the switches in the mindset switches we've seen in the industry in the past couple of years is exactly that. The VCs are becoming more hesitant after so many hacks, after so many failed projects, and they start to apply these things that we have gained. And if you want to have a competitive edge, building your startup, building an idea, just use the knowledge we already have. It's already there. There's so many websites and resources. Just use it. It will save you tons of money, and maybe if the idea is not viable and you still have cash, maybe you can just switch to something else with that available cash. Second thing is that, that was supposed to be a joke. Moving on. Second thing is my business model is not having one. This is like the second question I asked, and the reply was, you don't understand this. So it was like, okay guys, you're raising money right now. You're having a nice idea or whatever you want to call it. You're doing that. What's happening after the money are gone? What are you doing? What's your sustainable way of generating revenue along the way and make this sustainable business? And it was like blank faces, what we have to do that. I mean, we already raised money, right? And this problem is partially because of the founders, and partially because of the way the system works. As I mentioned, in the traditional VC world, you raise seed round, which is around 50 to 100K. You validate. You go for another seed round, probably in north of the 500s. You validate again, growing your user base. Go again, go Series A. Series A is between 1 mil and 5 mils. Series B, 5 to 20, and so on and so on and so on. And gradually, this is the way you raise money. And also, it's really efficient because the people and VCs that are, investing very early on are, investing when it's most risky. They are able to get a bigger portion of the company, so they have the bigger incentive, compared to the later on VCs. But what happens actually in VC world, in the Web3 world? We raise millions as the first step we do. We do a white paper, we promise beautiful things, we do really nice mock-ups, we have brilliant design, we raise millions, and then your incentive is not as simple and it's not like straightforward to get to the next step. You have not validated because you have enough money, you don't have to validate your idea, and everything is broken at that point. So yes, one thing is that the VCs, the founders are not, aligned in the proper way, but also the model is kind of broken. Again, we see this thing changes. We see a lot of, models that have been applied. We see the vesting schemes happening, not only for founders, but also for the VCs. So VCs will gradually get exposure to the tokens, but founders gradually will get exposure to, to the money that the VCs have invested. So this is happening, but it's still something that we have to think on, and we have to be mindful about. So number 3 is we're still in the stacking knowledge phase. And what I mean by that is that Web3 is really different from Web2 in multiple ways. One being the token economy, the token models. Very early on, again, I was really surprised because I'm coming from economic background, and the things that we're trying to build in Web3 are really complex. You have to align the incentives of multiple actors. You have the community, you have the founders, you have the wider founder team that is part of the startup in the very early days that have incentives with tokens and stuff like that. And we have to kind of align the incentives for everybody. And that's hard. This is social science, apart from being economic science. So we're kind of learning, we're testing and trying stuff. We've seen the early days of DAOs and what the real days of DAOs have brought us. We're now more, in evolution phase and more evolved in that. Probably we'll see more evolved DAOs in the future. I'm a kind of balanced optimist about DAOs. I think, running in a company, being part of the team that's running a company myself, I know it's really hard to align 100 people towards one unified goal, and this is you still have kind of leverage of doing so. Let alone, aligning hundreds of thousands of people on something, and you have no control at all, or they have no equal control. So this is really hard, extremely hard. And it's one of the things that we have to learn along the way. Other things related to the stacking phase, stacking knowledge phase, are related to the technology itself, how the technology interacts with traditional businesses. I mentioned that previously, and the other speakers about healthcare and traditional business that they have their own stoppers and important parts that we have to cover. But we're going there. It's happening slowly. And I think we see it from the most wider spread use cases to the more narrower, opposed to what happened with Web2, but we see how this goes. We're still figuring this whole Web3 thing out. Testing and trying is not bad. Testing and trying, I think, is the way to learn, but it's the way to learn if you learn from your mistakes. And I think there are several, good examples for that we're not, learning from our mistakes. In the ICO boom, we saw like hundreds of ICOs doing exactly the same thing during the course of a year and a half, and we knew that the end of this is coming, is happening. We saw that with DAOs. God knows what we're going to see with Next, but still, it's important to be mindful about the mistakes the previous guys have done and trying to improve on that. Number 5, every year it gets harder for the new people. One important thing is that, and one thing I've learned is that sometimes, not all the times, but sometimes, and especially in the early phase of a technology revolution, being a new, one of the first one is really important. And it's not really important because you have a higher chance of success. You probably don't because the system is not evolved, but because you have exposure to the ecosystem, to the people, and to the community from very early on. And this is priceless. Priceless multiple way because we are able to learn a lot. You are able to be part of a lot of the big technological, challenges, and see how the solutions are made, see how the groups are working, and stuff like that. Every year I see that it's way harder for the new people to join in. The community is becoming a bit more closed in a way, I think. We have this kind of some people in the ecosystem have this kind of a royalty status going on. which was not the case back in the days. You know, everybody was really open to talk to each other and to support each other, but now this has changed a bit. So yeah, if you decide to do something, do it now. You know, it's the best, it's the second best time after yesterday. And I have something final here, something that I didn't mention in the slides is that I, together with some people with my team, are co-founders of a DAO that's focused on metaverse and gaming. And I kind of added additional slide here in case I'm really fast going through my slides to have additional minutes to talk about. So just a buffer. And yeah, joke aside, it's what I'm excited about to see. You know, going through these past 5 years and the knowledge I have accumulated and the things I have seen. What's exciting about the next 5, for example? And I think that's gaming in Web3. We probably won't be having Ethereum if it was not for the notorious way Blizzard screw up Vitalik, right? This is one of the reasons why we have this technology. And I think it's most obvious case and one of the reasons that gaming would be the next big thing, I think, in our ecosystem. And I think the evolution is coming to that point. We saw the token usage revolution with ICOs, IDOs, and the servers. We saw the DeFi revolution, how to utilize the tokens, how to make them work, token economics, stuff like that. In the past couple of years, we saw the NFT revolution, thinking about finding use cases for NFTs, finding the way to utilize them. You know, Emo mentioned about, I forgot the exact phrase that he used, about token gating, right? Using the NFTs for token gating. This is something that we see a lot of big companies are interested in. You know, our companies have been approached by several of those, and token gating actually is the way, they approach the way to interact with their user base, their users, and, deal with loyalty tokens and loyalty points. NFTs are great, DeFi is great, token economics is great, and everything that's combined, makes a really compelling case for gaming. The only thing I think we're missing is interesting games and something that's worth playing and worth spending time on. Sorry, Axie Infinity. It's not a great game, at least in my opinion. We need something better than that. And I really hope that some of you guys in the room are going to work on that and bring this in Bulgaria the first, full-fledged NFT game that we see, and make a wave around the world. So thank you with that. And yeah, let's start with the Q&As.
Thank you, Nick. One question. What is the biggest challenge that you had to overcome in this Web3 journey? And so maybe the most difficult thing or the biggest lesson for you?
That's a good one. So there are 2 aspects to that. It's like one aspect is business-wise, the other aspect is ecosystem-wise. I think the biggest obstacle we had is 2018. At that point, we had a really bad bear market. Today, compared to 2018, is nothing. It's like business as usual. So at that point, we saw a lot of our competitors getting bankrupt. A lot of the projects went under, and it was a really scary time. The team at that point was like 20 people. We were just learning, and we just, we're trying. Sorry. We were just figuring this whole thing out and how to run a business, right? Most of the nights that I went to bed, I was like, oof, I have 20 people that rely on me, and if something happens, they and their families won't have what to eat the next day, which is kind of absurd way to think because these are highly skilled professionals who find a job the next day, but still. It's something to think about, right? And at that point, it was really scary. And the reason we went through this successfully is because we did some unorthodox decisions before that. And the lesson I learned is that you always have to think for yourself and not follow the crowd. What I mean exactly by that is that the ICO craze, everybody was doing ICOs and it was really easy money, right? Somebody, reached you out and said, do my ICO, and it was absurd, it was an absurd thing. I'll pay you with tokens, do that, do next. And then we were at that point decided to work on with projects that have a really good chance to survive and to make something meaningful. We left so much money on the table, but ultimately it was the best decision we did and we made because we survived 2008. And a lot of our competitors did not because they were really opportunistic on that end. So now, following the market, being really a bit pessimistic about what the future holds and thinking on your own, I think is ultimately what I can distill this experience from. Can we have the last one? Last one?
I'll be brief, yes. So what are your 5 key criteria that you use to discern between projects which are going to fail and which, in your opinion, are going to survive?
Oh, that's a good one. I think whatever your hypothesis about the project is, it's gonna probably be wrong, because ultimately people that are building the project are, the expert in their own field. And the trees will be distilled to one, it's the founders. When we interact with the founders, when we interact with them, we can see their strives, what motivates them, what's their driver, right? And ultimately this, kind of gives information about the project, because their values are gonna be, transferred to the values of the project. Whether it's gonna be a successful project or not, nobody knows. But if it's the right team and with the right mindset, I think ultimately that's what makes them, have a higher chance to be successful. Thanks.